Hey everyone, welcome back to the Junta with Scott Radigan. I'm Scott Radigan, and I'm excited today because we have Uli Iserloh. Now, we've had him on the podcast before, but I brought him back because he's a really powerful message after spending more than a month in the ICU, what he did with his business, how he made that kind of work without him. But I also want you to kind of listen all the way through to the end because he touches on a lot of marketing tips and pearls. And he also has a book, From Prospects to Patients, that's available on Amazon. You should definitely go check out. And then do me a favor, if you like this kind of stuff and you like the show and you want to support it, easiest thing to do is just hit subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. And without further ado, let's get to Uli, who I always learn something when I talk to him. So I hope you enjoy. Today, we welcome back Uli Iserloh, PhD. As one of the leading digital marketing strategists in this space and kind of in any space, Uli helps health practitioners turn prospects into patients consistently and largely automated. On today's episode, we're going to talk about a recent health scare that kept him in the ICU for nearly a month, 25 days. And during that time, what did he already have in place that kept his business afloat during that time? Powerful lessons that will help you create a more resilient practice if, say, anything happened to you or you just want to take a break. Hey, welcome, Uli.
Yeah, welcome on the show, and super excited to really dive in. Obviously, we all ascribe to the saying, if you have health, you have everything. If you don't have health, then nothing else matters. While we all know, okay, this is true in general. When it hits home, when you're the one that ends up, as you said, I was in the ICU for 25 days a few months back. And that's a true stress test for your practice, for your business, to see whether that business is ready to run without you. And obviously that has implications. As you said, obviously it gives you the time and location freedom if you ever wanted to step away and have different work-life balance. But it also comes back in the context of practice resilience. Do you have things in place that you truly operate as a business versus more of a hobby where it really depends on you showing up each and every day?
Yeah, and I'm sure that people have to kind of understand that there are levels, because I can kind of hear the questions from some of our providers, like, if I'm out for a month, like, how it's just me. So what do you even mean until I can hire somebody else to actually see patients? And so before we get to that level of hiring somebody else to do the delivery of, in this case, healthcare, I know you talk a lot about automations. And so what could it be that, while maybe not like direct patient care, that a person with one, maybe two providers in their practice could set up in place now that would help them not everything go in the tank if they had to step away, or if they don't have to step away or don't have a health scare, how can they make it a little more easy to run their practice as a business?
Yeah. So what happened to me, just to tell the story in chronological order.
Sure.
One day you're fine. The next day, you find yourself in the emergency room with pneumonia. I thought, like, I have a viral infection. I'm coughing a little bit. And then little did I know what was going on. So I'm in the ER, and next day they put me on a ventilator for 3 or 4 days. So it was like really going down very rapidly. And then from there, with all the fluid in the lungs, my heart wasn't really happy. Tachycardia, AFib, etc. So now they're worrying about a heart attack. And then, in the end, what the resolution was is that I had open heart surgery. It was a 5-hour ordeal. Again, I did not see this coming. One day you're fine. And then throughout this entire thing, 25 days in various ICUs, doctors coming by every day, and you're just wondering, will I make it? Will I make it out on the other end? And at that point, anything about business is obviously secondary. Fortunately, knock on wood, the doctors did an amazing job, saved my life 2 or 3 times throughout that period. Was really, really close calls. And so I'm super grateful. I think the learning lesson that you take home is either you change your behavior. Do I really need to work this hard going forward? Or what's the right work-life balance? Or you don't get the lesson. And so in my case, I think all the science pointed to you got to have a way to run your business in a way that does not rely as hard on you, that a lot of the things that can be automated should be automated. And I'll be honest, if this had happened 2 years before, my business would have probably imploded. A team of 20 people, are you making bank? I was sort of the quintessential person in there. If you're not there, everything grinds to a halt. And fortunately, none of this happened. It was probably a little bit more stressful of a stress test than you would want, right? Going on vacation is probably a little bit easier way to test if your practice or business is ready. But in this case, it was cold turkey, from one day to the next. I didn't have time for communications. I was hooked up on IVs, on drugs, etc. I was delirious. So what really saved the day is that when you think about a business, obviously the first part is how do you get new leads in there, new patient leads, right? What's happening to the marketing? And again, this is where having solid systems in place to get exposure reliably, and then how do you nurture people up so that they go from being a prospect into ready for a discovery call, ready for enrollment. All these things take a lot of touch points, and whether you want to work less hours in your practice or you have something like what happened to me, this is where automation is so critical. So automation is the first part. We can talk about other things like having the right team, having SOPs, having the structure in place. But to some extent, you have to really reimagine your entire practice to see how much can be done by other providers in the clinic rather than the lead provider. Because ultimately, yes, patients always want to work with the doctor whose name is on the door. But if you're really thinking about your time is extremely valuable, should they really be working with you for each and every item in their care journey, or can you have other people, health coaches, allied health providers, other nurse practitioners, etc., in your clinic that can do the brunt of the care delivery?
Yeah. And I know that when it's just you and you have to do all of the hats as a business owner and provider, you think there's no way I could step away from all of this. I know there's a lot of teams out there that are spouse or partner driven, where one of them will take on the majority of the administrative roles. But even in that scenario where you do have a partner, if something happened to either of you, or let's get away from the catastrophe, if you ever wanted to sell the business in the future, it needs to kind of run without your face at the center, front and center of it.
Yeah.
So both of these things, if you don't want to think about, potential catastrophes, then also think about what is your plan in 5 or 10 years when it's time for you to kind of step back and have better work-life balance and avoid a big ICU trip and open heart surgery potentially. So these are great. Yeah. And just to back up a second, Uli, and say, why do we have Uli? He's the founder of Big Boost Marketing. That's bigboost.marketing is the website. And then he's been doing marketing and kind of a brilliant mind for the past better part of 15 years, I think, in this space. And before that, PhD in chemistry.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Good memory there for me. And he has a new book right now, which I bought with my own money, called Prospects to Patients. It's available on Amazon and probably at bigboost.marketing too.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
And it's a good, use of your $20, even if you only take a couple of pearls out of it. I've read the majority of it, and there's a lot of actionable steps in here too. So
yeah. For us, and maybe how to make it more relevant. I know you're covering a lot of these items also in your own origin incubator, but if you think about the 5 areas that make for a successful practice, the first one is really having dialed in your unique care delivery method. What are you known for? How do you deliver care? What's the business model? Do you have cohorts? Do you have one-on-one? Do we have group coaching? What are the different permutation that your practice makes money? And that's really the first pillar. You have to be clear on that part. Now, interlinked with this is then discovery call mastery, or, the meet and greet, when you have people in that conversation and, at the point where they're deciding, should I enroll or not, you got to be master at having that conversation, understanding what are they thinking, what can I say, how do I guide them to the decision that I know is the right one for you, for them. Obviously that's the second pillar. And I see oftentimes that, when you work with practitioners, maybe you can share this too, they say, yeah, I aced the discovery call, I have a good enrollment rate. But then when you sort of dig a little bit deeper, you realize, wow, there's a lot of money mindset issues that are still there. It's not as powerful. And, frankly, the bottom line here of the second area is if you don't believe in your program and your care delivery method, why should the patient, right? So again, there's no room for low confidence of not going all in on this and believing that what you have is the best program under the sun. So that's part 2. And then obviously the next part is, well, for people to be properly pre-educated, they need to have gone through some educational process. And this is where we favor evergreen webinars, email marketing, SMS marketing, all that stuff. What do you do on social media? But, ultimately, if you don't have a reliable way to turn prospects into patients, and that's obviously where the title of the book came from, then it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to put gasoline in the tank, aka invest in social media or paid ads, etc. I would tell people don't run paid ads unless you have a way to actually turn that ad spend into patients, right? If you're not sure you have a process behind the scene in place that works on autopilot 24/7, then probably better to spend the money on building the system to educate people than spending it on building up your Instagram or spending money on ads, spending money on SEO, etc. So that's part 3. In part 1, care delivery. Part 2, discovery call mastery. Part 3, patient education. And then the last 2 areas that we normally focus on for successful practice is really systems and automation. So again, especially as a solo practitioner, what are some of the things that happen each and every day, each and every week that technology could handle way better? So, part of it is having an EMR, having, booking system for discovery calls or paid appointments. These are things that a modern, digitally smart modern practice should have in place. And there's a lot of other things, phone tree. If people call your office, how can you relieve your front desk from having to answer each and every call? How can you have a phone tree where it's like press 1 if you're a new patient looking to schedule a discovery call, press 2 if you're an existing client looking to schedule a follow-up appointment, right? This technology can handle all of this. And now with AI, it's even more insane of what's possible in terms of answering phones, handling phone calls, etc. But this is the sort of like key area to automate and have systems in place. So, you can rely less on staff. You can make it work if you're a solo practitioner. But even if you have staff, your staff could now do more meaningful things rather than the mundane. Software can do so much faster, cheaper, and in a more streamlined fashion.
Yeah, even within that, it's nice to have phone trees, but maybe your EMR also has existing patients able to schedule on their own without contacting your front desk, so they have more time to do other tasks as well. And I know you get into that too.
Another thing could be SOAP note charting that, in today's world, why wouldn't you use an AI SOAP note taker that listens into your conversation on Zoom and then at the end of the conversation presents you with the finished SOAP notes? You just review it, make some tweaks, put it into the EMR notes, and you're done. These are all examples of what it means to run a digitally smart practice and move more things to the software side than relying on human manpower.
Yeah, I know some people get overwhelmed with this because, while great providers, right? And they spend all their time getting up to where they want to be clinically. I know at Functional Lawyer and at Incubator, where a lot of people, from a mindset standpoint anyways, feel like, oh, I'm not a business person. I have no idea what I'm doing, when it's all learnable. But for somebody with that kind of a mindset coming into like tech and automation, how do you kind of address that?
Yeah, it's totally understandable. Obviously it wasn't covered in medical school or whatever training you went through. And I think that's downright criminal. So again, oftentimes the reason why providers take on more and more credentials is because they feel, okay, I can't serve patients the right way, when what they really need is just some working systems. And they would realize like what I already have amassed in terms of clinical knowledge is more than enough. So fortunately, technology is becoming much more powerful, while at the same time, the cost is going down. So just as an example, probably 4 years ago, it would require 6 to 8 systems to run what I think is the basics of an online practice. You need an online scheduler. So that used to be Calendly, Acuity Scheduler. I know Squarespace had a scheduler. So you would have to pay $20, $30 a month for that. Then the next thing is, okay, now I need an email list. So people went with MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, something like this. Okay, there goes another $50 to $100 a month. Then you needed a lead magnet and you need landing pages. So it's probably something like ClickFunnels or another landing page builder. So there goes another $97. And then probably if you had a quiz, you certainly needed your EMR. So, before you know it, you have 6 to 8 systems, and technically it's freaking overwhelming. It's like you need a full-time tech person to just have everything duct taped together because it wasn't meant to work together, right? And so it was very frustrating for us as a marketing agency too, you just build somebody a system like this was really, really expensive. It took months just because it's like 6 different systems and you never knew if something was broken. I think you spent more time fixing things than things actually working out. And so about 4 years ago came out a new platform known as Go High Level. And we decided to say, wow, this is the all-in-one Swiss Army knife. It's HIPAA compliant. It does all the things that you need for a thriving practice. And so we built on top an operating system for integrative and functional medicine practitioners. So, there's a basic software, just like WordPress, that does pretty much everything that you wanted to do. But that in of itself is light years away from what we built, what needs to happen. So we invested the time and a couple $100,000 to build essentially the marketing system for integrative and functional medicine practices. And, it's really critical, especially for those that are solo practitioners. So we built landing pages, we built lead magnets, email sequences, SMS marketing. The first thing that we help people really with is an automated webinar on the front end, turning into a discovery call funnel so that people can come from social media into your webinar, understand what you do, and then book a discovery call and enroll into care. And so that's the most basic set of funnels strung together like Lego building blocks. And we decided, okay, practitioners are super busy. Let's write all the copy for them, done for them. And all they have to do is review the copy and then tweak it. So, instead of spending 99% of your time on building things, you spend essentially 1 to 5% of that time just reviewing what we built. And that's been proven the formula to get people launched within like 60 to 90 days to have everything in one place. And incidentally, a lot of the office manager that switched into the system, and by now we've probably migrated over 180 people into our system, every single person says, oh my God, this is so much easier to learn. I think, you don't realize, on the one hand, not only did you go from like $500 a month in software expenses to something around 200, so you save hundreds of dollars each month, but at the same time, you're not having to master 6 different systems. Now it's just your EMR and what we call the marketing EMR. So it's like people know where to click, where things are, everything is super organized. And just like a regular EMR, you don't have to use all the features, but it does everything that you want, from social media management, having a patient pipeline, having a contact page where you see all the information about the lead, ability to book discovery calls, the ability to host online courses, membership areas, etc. So we've totally tricked this out. And this is, part of what I cover here in the book, the systems that you should have in place. And then the faster way to actually, instead of building it, just have us duplicate our systems, customize it, and you end up in a place that is a lot easier to handle. And so it's a pretty long answer to your question, what if practitioners are overwhelmed with technology and marketing? My point is you don't have to master it. It's just replicate this into your practice and let our team teach you how to use it.
I mean, one, that sounds great, but two, having dabbled with Go High Level myself, it's not the most intuitive for someone to figure out on their own. So what you just ended with there is our team teach you how to use it. It's probably one of the biggest value adds that even there was a lot of value you talked about, but the teaching you how to use it is probably the biggest one. Because with all of this, and going back to somebody who doesn't have a good, feels like they're not good at tech, and we all feel not good at something when we're brand new to it, first of all. But for somebody who is newer to it, it can be obviously overwhelming. And so having someone to teach you is really great, really high value stuff.
Well, it all started with, when I talk about the automated webinar funnel, it's interesting. Back in 2015, the way practitioners generated new patients is lunch and learns, dinner with a doc, etc. You had these free events, live events. You would advertise it. You would pay for dinner maybe or lunch. And then some people would show up. Out of those, a few people would sign up for the initial appointment, and that was the marketing funnel. And then COVID hit and people realized, shoot, that doesn't work. What do I do now? So people moved to live webinars, hosting it once a week, etc. And that became the vehicle. And now with Netflix and all the streaming providers, people expect that I want to watch this on my own time when I'm ready, not wait for next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. And so now we've moved to on-demand automated webinar so that people can watch it on their own. Now, obviously, a number of things change there. When you have a live webinar, people are kind of stuck there, and most of them stay till the end. So you can make it an hour long. You can go through slides. But I think when you go to an automated webinar, the demands are a lot higher. It has to be a lot shorter. It has to be a lot more to the point. Time is valuable for your prospects, so you have to keep it moving. You have to keep it interesting. And so what we found is that when we produce an 18-minute on-demand webinar that much more feels like a TikTok video or Netflix docuseries with lots of B-roll, moving things, minimized boring slides, and walking through slides for a minute, that's what's needed to retain the attention of those that watching and really introduce that paradigm shift in how you're different versus what they may have experienced or tried before.
Yeah. Do you, for someone, and this may be a little in the weeds, but do you see a difference in conversion from other people that you are helping with automated and continue to still do live? Or if from the past, how's the conversion rate different between maybe a 1 hour live webinar and your shorter on-demand webinars?
Yeah, it's that both have their advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, live webinars, a lot of work, require a lot of energy. You have to show up. The knock on live webinar is this. You promote the webinar for a week, you get 200 people to show up, but 85% of the people don't show up. So, you have 15%, maybe 20% that show up. So you lose at least 80% of the eyeballs right off the bat. And so you're working with only maybe 20% of the leads that you get, maybe 15. And those sometimes may not be the best clients. Those are the people that have more time than money. And all the people that have more money and no time, they're probably ones skipping this thing. They signed up, sounded like a good idea. And then when 5 days later, they're like, yeah, not that important, moving on. If you switch to an automated webinar, what happens is that you instantly go from 20 or 15 to 20% show up rate to 88%, because, again, people opt in and everybody essentially start watching your webinar right away. So you get a 5x increase in show up rate. And if you play the first, 5-minute right, if it's engaging, it's fast moving, very few people will fall off. And overall, you get a lot more people watching. And then obviously, if it's shorter, by the time they get to 10 minutes, which is maybe 2/3 through the webinar, your webinar probably accomplished the main goal to establish preeminence, to get the main points across, so that you already changed people's perception. Maybe that's enough to get in the discovery call. So I found that I'd much rather have people start watching and get to know, like, and trust me versus doing it live and hoping, but now they can't leave and now I have 60 minutes, but I don't have to, be on my A game. I can sort of like make my way through it. So I feel when you have both, I think that's the best of both worlds. So we still run live webinars every 2-3 weeks. But it is a version of the evergreen webinar. Obviously, it's a little bit longer. Obviously, I can't play all the video clips that are in there, but for our clients that want to expose people, even after a webinar or after a lead magnet, you're opting in. It's like, hey, watch our on-demand webinar. And, so you have that practice overview video that explains your methodology, why you're different, why they should partner with you, why conventional care may not be ready. I believe every practice needs something like this in their practice, because you can't do this on your own. And so I think helping practitioner with this has been huge. It's been our most popular offer. It goes back all the way to 2018. I was at an event where I pitched from stage, hey, we help you build your webinar. And out of 40 people, one person actually did it. The other 39 people never started. So I realized I've resisted for a long time to help people build webinars. And then earlier this year, it's like, I know this is so critical. Everybody must have it. How are we actually be able to, do it for them? What do we need to have in place to make that happen? But we eventually figured it out. It's a lot of extra work, but I think it's worth it. Clients say, it's like, I'm glad I have this webinar. It makes such a difference in patient education, in generating discovery calls, etc. So that's essentially part of this entire ecosystem. That's not just us deploying some marketing templates and landing pages, but we really get our hands dirty and work with clients on, it's like, okay, what's the topic of your webinar? How do you want to structure it? What's unique about your practice? And build that out so that all you have to do is record a voiceover, and then we put that webinar reel together and launch it for you as an evergreen webinar funnels. For those of you listening and that want to sort of get a glimpse at what that could look like, I'm sure Scott can put a link in the show notes for some examples to give you inspiration, so you can maybe pull it off on your own. Or if you love to chat with our team about building something like this, we're always happy to jump on a call.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get with Uli after we're done here and get a couple of demo pages and put it in our show notes, and I'll add that description in the intro and outro of this video. Thank you for that, Uli. I mean, that sounds like what you're doing is a lot of identifying a problem for either your prospects or your current clients and then solving it for them.
Yeah.
In a way that makes sense.
Hey, and I find the analogy to health practitioners is, you start out, okay, let me solve this one problem for this patient. And then you realize, this patient has this problem too. Okay, let me fix this too. And before you know it, you're like fixing 10, 15 problems. You almost get involved in their life. Can I find you a nanny to take care of this? And can I hire you a private chef, etc., right? At some point, you're wondering, it's like, when is this ever ending? There's a lot that goes into running a business. That goes a lot into helping a patient get healthy. And, there's always this balancing act, how deep do I go into it? What else can I take on? I'm sure it's the same for you when you work with clients, with your wife, and help them figure out how to run their practice, how to set up their practice. It's challenging, but I guess also rewarding.
Yeah. And, we teach a lot of that, and you could solve, and we always say you could solve their problem in a number of ways. You could, from a practitioner standpoint, you could go to their house and clean out their pantry and teach them how to cook one-on-one. Or that's probably not, good for your time, or it would cost too much for the person to pay you that. And so there are just varying ways to do it. It can be as simple as a PDF document, not very helpful, very easy to deliver, or going one-on-one to their house and, very helpful, not easy to deliver on a grander scale. And so there is always a scale of how can you deliver this solution to their problem in a way that is helpful for them and is easy for you to deliver. So we do teach that, but I mean, it sounds like your webinar product or offering is pretty cool.
No, we have a number of these kind of things, alluded to Discovery Call Mastery. We have a product around this for anybody that feels less than confident on having the conversation. So we do mock discovery call trainings. This is something anybody could just enroll in and get help with. Having sessions on just doing strategic brainstorm. How do you have to tweak your practice operating system to maybe generate more revenue per patient? What else can you snap on? What else would make sense? So it goes back to the 5 key elements that are required for successful practice. And obviously, one of the biggest one is always the patient pre-education and marketing system. So having somebody that can just plug that whole thing into plug that whole thing into your practice, customize it with your logo and your information, and then teach you, okay, this is how you run this. Again, I found that there's so many online courses and masterminds and coaching groups out there, but what all of them are missing is done for you implementation. That at the end, people are in these online courses or masterminds for a year. At the end, they haven't built anything. I'm like, you should have just given me the money. I would have built this for you in 2 months and then, showed you how to run it. So there's a shift in thinking that, as a practitioner, we always want to, oftentimes want to DIY stuff, or we're smart enough to build it ourselves. But the question is always, is it actually smart to DIY this when your main job title is practitioner?
Yeah. And that's kind of one of the chicken or the egg things is do you value time or money more? And so I know I'm working on some content around, how much money do you need to start a practice? And so what does that go towards? And obviously you can go from, probably like $1,000 to $250,000, depending on how you want to start and how much money you have. But everywhere in between, there's kind of a common sense way to balance DIY, saving money, and
I think
investing to save yourself time.
Yeah. And I would say in today's world, never before has it been more affordable to start and run your own practice. Software costs are coming down. Software is getting more powerful than ever. You need less, software than you ever needed before. Again, there's a lot of now online ways to run your practice. You don't need a physical build out. So, again, there's really a lot of things that are possible now that, you and I have been around this for, 10, 15 years. So, going back, it used to be a lot harder to just jerry-rig things together. And now I feel it's a lot more streamlined of what's possible. And again, and the pandemic has certainly done their part, that it sort of broke the expectation that one-on-one is the only way to go. Suddenly it's okay to do virtual telemedicine visits. Suddenly it's okay to do group coaching programs or group experiences. So it really has evolved a lot in the last 5 years. And with AI, I definitely see that now. From a marketing perspective, content generation, usually only the biggest clinics could afford social media marketing, advertising, etc. And now AI is putting a lot of the power back into the hand of solo practitioners, small practices, where you couldn't tell the difference who generated the article, because now it's all driven by AI.
Yeah, you glossed over it a little bit, but I want to highlight, like, as you said, even just 6 years ago, to start a practice, you almost had to have a brick and mortar location. And now I would say half or more than half of people that come through Functional Warrior and Origins Incubator are like, I'm going to start all virtual and then maybe someday have an in-person practice, because that cuts out furniture and landlines and different internet expenses, and not to mention the lease and all the things that go into that. So huge lowering of overhead just from that perspective.
Yeah,
Plus,
and obviously that forces then also that location freedom, that, if you want to work from anywhere, if you have a virtual care model, then obviously it opens up a lot of other things. So I think this is why you and Linda are so great at helping people architect this and decide what they want to build, and then help them build it.
Yeah, you may be able to be anywhere, but your patients ought to be in licensed states of your licensure if you're practicing medicine or giving individualized care. So my book, Practice Telemedicine, goes over a lot of the general concepts there. We have that conversation all the time at Functional Warrior. And actually, I'm a little amazed that people are still being taught that you can just call yourself a coach and then you can do whatever you want around the country. Objectively, not true. So just do your education. You don't have to come through me. But to Uli's point, though, yes, a lot of your location freedom is freed up. You can be seeing patients from your mountain retreat and go skiing. Or depending on time of year, you could be at the beach house that you now own because you've systematized your practice using some of the Uli's techniques in the book, or if you work directly with him there too. So I just want to caveat that as well. Uli, this has been great so far. Where do you, I'll kind of open up to you. Where do you want to take it from here as far as costs have come down, systems or software and people like you are helping to automate? But if kind of going back to, if somebody was forced to step away or was trying to prepare their business for a sale, what would be some of like the, high level milestones to kind of say, these are the things you need in place? And if you're in a position where you've got one human in the whole business wearing all the hats, what would be like, okay, step one is get some, I'll let you do the steps, but from like get some systems in place and then have some SOPs. That way you can train and onboard somebody to help you. Can you walk us through maybe what that might look like?
Yeah, I think the core underlying feeling that you want to have is monthly recurring revenue, that where's the money coming from, that you have predictability in your revenue. And so that is in part having a system of like, okay, here's the people that need my help. How do they get nurtured? How do they come into the system? So having pre-education systems in place. But married to that is really also, what is it that people want to buy or invest in when they are on a discovery call? So ultimately, it doesn't really matter what you want to sell. What matters is what do they want to invest in? So that speaks then really to the manner in which you deliver care. Do they want one-on-one, or are they okay with a group setting? Could you bundle things together where you have done with you group coaching course experience where, you can step out of the one-on-one role and you could have a health coach run this system. So just thinking about wherever you are right now, you may be still wearing all the hats, but at least having a vision of, well, if I had to get myself out of the business, what is it that needs to be replaced, and having really that initial assessment. And then obviously walking back from that, figuring out, okay, in what order do I do it? So it's okay if your current business model is not yet supporting you stepping out of it, but there's definitely a lot of the things that you can put in place that ultimately will then support the practice when you're ready while supporting your practice right now. So again, if you figured out here's a new product I can launch that doesn't require me, that's a great thing that, you may want to launch right now, even while you're doing one-on-one care. And obviously depends on your licensure what you can do. But recently, when I had this healthcare scare, and then I had to pick a practice, when I went into that new practice, it was an integrative DO. And I was amazed at, how efficient they were, that, the first visit wasn't even with the provider. It was with the PA that did the medical history and did everything. And so again, this is where the main provider worked themselves out of that meeting. And then you get into, had all the lab tests done. So that's happening. They got you set up. Then in between, they had IV sessions and PMF and all these other things, supplements. So they already started monetizing that relationship and obviously started me on care. And then 3 or 4 weeks in, that was the first meeting with the provider. So again, you kind of, rather than having to do anything by yourself, that was the first meeting where, the provider time was required. I'm sure could have been an associate too. And, at that point, he would have worked himself out of that job as well. So again, if you are there and you don't have an associate, well, for now, you're taking that first follow-up appointment, but down the, would be somebody else doing this. And so then really figuring out how can that practice run without you? What's the cadence? What's the expectation? So, I have to give kudos to that clinic. They were doing pretty much everything right, including their marketing that, when I had to make a decision, do I work with them? I went to their website. The guy had written 3 books, pictures with Suzanne Somers about BHRT. He had a 60-minute YouTube video where he explained what they do in their practice and why it's so powerful and why they're pioneers in this area. So again, I was like mentally checking the boxes. This guy does everything to influence my decision to see him as the expert that he is, without him to having to send a million emails, etc. So, obviously the website was a big part of it. Having that explainer video was a big part. Seeing him as an expert was important. So it's like all these little things that come together, and doesn't mean you have to have all of them all at once, but obviously the more of these elements you string together, the more powerful the entire ensemble becomes, because everything reinforces each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. It must be hard for you as a marketer to kind of go to any business and not just evaluate what they're doing from a meta analysis level.
Screenshots of the posters on the wall, because some of it was like quite polarizing. There was like a sign, "How healthy are you really, Mark?" And then it was like all about the testing, and it was like cancer screening, genetic screening, all the other things. And they get you to question, well, how healthy am I really? And they started sowing that seed of a doubt that, well, maybe I don't know everything about my condition, and maybe I need them to help me figure out what's missing in it. So it's like little touches that really get patients involved, that they realize, well, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe you need to get lab testing to do this. And he knows lab testing is the gateway through which patients come into the practice. They come for the lab test, and then they stay for the treatments. Made that play, not saying that every practitioner needs to lead with lab testing, but, in his case, he's specialty lab testing that, for the right people, they want this testing. Let's say you have mold in your house and you're the one that does mold testing. So mold testing is really the gateway that then unlocks mold treatment and all this other stuff on the back end. Or people, Lyme, etc., and other, stealth infections, etc. There's this whole ecosystem of like people looking for a certain lab test. All they want is a lab test. And then once they have the lab test, obviously it's very easy to pivot in the report of finding, hey, you're interested in us helping resolve this issue. And so I like the nature that the initial commitment is fairly low. You just have to pay for the lab testing and engage in that part. But little do you know is, a month later, you're now in care. So as a marketer, I always love it when practices pull this off correctly, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's all about getting the patient the help they need, right? And if the patient does not enroll in care, we can't help them. And then the patient is off even worse. So it's not about taking people's money, but the act of extracting the money of, coaching patients to the point where they're saying, I'm happily investing in your program, is really the name of the game. And that's essentially what I cover in Prospects to Patients, my book, where it's all about how do you have to play your cards so that patients naturally come to the conclusion that you're the one.
Yeah, I think you cover a lot of that in chapter 1, which I did read that. And we teach very similar concepts there. But I like how you said, so chapter 1 for you guys that haven't read it yet is about how to make your offer irresistible for people where they don't feel like they're being sold, where they're like, oh my God, that's exactly what I need. But I like how you talked about polarization, because for years, or when we first encountered each other, maybe a decade ago or so, it was niche down, niche down, niche down. But so many providers don't know how to niche down. And I'm getting to a larger point here, but I think being polarizing is scary to a lot of people, because what you just said made you excited about it as a marketer, but it may turn off either the providers from doing that same tactic, or they might be afraid to turn patients away. And so what a lot of we teach is, one, just build it how you want to deliver care. Maybe don't copy somebody else if that's not how you feel. But in doing so, what you'll do is you'll repel the patients that are not a good fit for you. And that's okay, because it'll also attract more people that are in your style. So throughout your webinar and your explainer video and all of your touch points with people, being true to yourself will push away the people that are not aligned with you, and it will attract people that are aligned with you. And so I like that polarization part, but I can kind of like feel people cringing when you kind of described what it said. So if that's not a fit for you, just leave it, toss it away and do what makes more sense for you.
Yeah.
I think what Uli's getting at there, tell me if I'm wrong, is kind of like identifying frustrations or pain points for people kind of generally. And he went about it one way, but you can go about it a different way.
Yeah. I can maybe end with like 2 additional thoughts here that might be helpful in that realm. And the first one, they're both so philosophical questions. The first one is, a lot of times we want to help patients and we put DIY content out there. And I define DIY content where you put out some Band-Aid solution in an effort to be helpful, but inadvertently what you do is you have the patients continue believing that they can fix this on their own. Now, if they're healthy, if it's about wellness, do as much DIY as you want. But a patient that has Hashimoto's, I don't think any amount of DIYing will get them out of Hashimoto's on their own. They need specialty lab testing. They need supplements. They need your help. And so if your goal is to get more patients into your clinic, maybe you should stop posting DIY content. It will backfire, because those people, the more you put this out there, the less people actually want to get into discovery calls. So that's the first part. And the second part, if you really think about
when you say DIY, it's like basically purely educational. I'm like, here are some tips how to get
educational healthy. Or, 3 foods to eat to reduce autoimmunity. I'm like, well, if you really have autoimmunity, you need more than just 3 foods. And, if you make them believe that just changing your food source is enough to get rid of your Crohn's, then sorry, doesn't work that way. So, this is why I'm always very hesitant when I see practitioners and I analyze their social media feed and saying it's not working. I'm like, well, you're posting DIY content that keeps people out of your clinic, unless it's about purely wellness content, how to improve wellness. It doesn't work for diseases and when they're not healthy. And the second part is really, the idea that unless people question what they're currently doing, they're never going to embrace a different path, right? If you need them to change the way of thinking, you got to get them to change how they think about things. So if you don't challenge them on maybe this dieting approach is not the right way to lose weight. So they have to question what they're doing in order to lose the weight, in order to open their mind that there's a different path that they should be pursuing. So again, this is where the polarizing part comes into play, that rather than telling people in social media, here's what you should do to fix XYZ, I would just tell them, hey, let's be honest. Is this way really the best way to address Hashimoto's? You've been trying this for 3 years. What are the chances that, things change in the next year? Probably 0. So I think unless people decide on social media that they want to change ways, that they want to go about the problem a different way, they're never going to sign up for a discovery call and they never initiate care. So a principal part of marketing is really this Socratic method of like getting them to question the status quo. Because if they don't question the conventional approach, what are the chances that they sign up for integrative or functional medicine care? Probably 0, right? So I think these are sort of 2 points when it comes to social media marketing or marketing in general, that too much DIYing information is probably bad. And unless you get people to question the status quo, that's probably bad too. So I hope this is helpful, as sort of like something to mull over and maybe review in your social media. Again, as I mentioned before, our team is always happy to, sit down with practitioners and go over their marketing and just point out where things don't line up properly in these 5 areas of practice success. But that's our gift to the community.
Yeah. And the book, and I don't know what the price is now, but it's probably less than $20 on Amazon. It's called Prospects to Patients. And if you just take 2 or 3 things from that, it's probably worth the $20 for you. And then there's lots of info on how, if you want, to work with Uli there at Well. Again, Uli Iserloh, PhD, founder of Big Boost Marketing. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks again to Uli. Guys, this episode is brought to you by Origins Incubator. It's the only physician-led program that helps build you up from clinical, legal, and practice management, along with mindset. Some of the mindset we talked about in today's episode, we cover in Incubator as far as challenging people's limiting beliefs, challenging the status quo, all of that, and challenging yours as well. So if you are stuck in a rut, or you are kind of struggling to build your practice, or you're brand new and you want to make sure you don't spend 3 to 5 years learning all the lessons the hard way, check us out at originsincubator.com, where we can help you build, scale, and grow your practice much faster than you might be able to do it on your own. And it's led by my lovely wife, Linda Mattioli, and she's a DO. And then Cheryl Burdett, who's a naturopath who's been speaking on international stages for the past 20 years. Then yours truly is there as well. You owe it to yourself to check out our latest webinar. We run 2 cohorts a year in April and September. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys at Origins Incubator. And if you like the show, let us know in the comments on YouTube, or just hit follow and subscribe. Great way to say thank you. All right. Have a great one, and we'll see you in the next show.